Salt in Our Veins. Chapter 2. Not the Same Sea. Mornings come early in Eden. The boats leave before the sun clears the hills. The wind moves like it remembers everything. And when someone returns, especially after 10 years, the town notices, even if it doesn't say so out loud. Noah's mother made a full breakfast the morning after he returned. Not just toast and eggs, the whole spread. Bacon crisp just right, grilled tomatoes glistening, even hash browns, which she never bothered with, unless it was someone's birthday or holiday. The kettle whistled twice. She pulled out the good plates, poured juice into the glasses they use for guests. She never said she missed him. She didn't need to. They ate together with a kind of practiced politeness. Afterward, Noah offered to wash the dishes, but his mother waved him off. Noah nodded, stepped out the front door, and into the wind. The town of Eden didn't sleep in. By the time he reached the main road, the boats were already gone. Pushed out into the bay was the kind of purpose only people born to the sea understood. Somewhere out near the headland, a gal cried once and disappeared into the wind. The cruise ship hadn't arrived yet, but the town knew it would. You could feel the shift, the face Eden put on for the day. A little more upright, a little more polished, still the same, but trying just a bit. Noah walked past the bakery, the scent of sugar and heat clinching to the open door. Two old women stood near the window display, half watching him. "That Noah?" one said, not quietly. "He's taller," the other replied. "Didn't he go to Sydney?" "No, it was Adelaide." "Same thing." Noah didn't turn, just kept walking, hands in his pocket. But something curled in his chest. Not quite embarrassment, not quite regret. Something quieter, like being remembered and mistaken at the same time. Down by the wharf, a group of kids clustered around an older man holding a knot of rope. He was showing them how to tie something. One of the boys shaded his eyes, looking farther down the dock, and called out towards someone out of view. "Kai, you coming?" No, I stopped. Not because of the name, but because of the way it still ended. Deep, uninvited, unchanged. He didn't turn around, didn't need to. The breeze shifted, and somewhere behind him, footsteps moved along the dock, slow, measured, certain. Noah didn't move right away. He let the voice behind him blur into the breeze, and only when the footsteps slowed beside him did he finally glance over. Kai stood there, 10 years later, and still somehow unmistakable, but older, not just in the way his shoulders had filled out, or the stronger line of his jaw, or the quiet steadiness in the way he stood. It was something else, something in the eyes, in the set of his mouth. The boy Noah remembered had always carried silence like a shield. But this man carried it like it was simply part of him. His curls were shorter now. His skin was darker, like the sea had claimed him even more deeply. His hands looked the same, though. Kai looked at him and nodded. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't cold either, just honest. Noah swallowed. He planned to say something else, but what came out instead was the truth. "Sorry I didn't text back." Kai didn't answer, didn't need to. His eyes did enough. They stood in the morning light like that, saying nothing. One of the kids from the group called out, "Kai, what's taking you?" And just like that, the moment crept open. Noah stepped back, his hand brushing the edge of the dock rail. "I have to go," he said quietly. He didn't wait for a reply, just turned and walked away, the sea brushing at the piling beneath him like it was trying to call him back. In the summer, Kai taught sailing to local kids. Not the polished, city-style kind, just the real stuff. How to read the gust before they turned. How to move with the tide, not against it. How to feel the wind through the ropes in your hand. He liked teaching. There was a kind of peace in it. When cruise ships docked, he helped unload their early supply runs. In the off-season, when the tourists thinned out and the air turned sharp, he worked with his family's fishing boat. The town knew him, trusted him, called him solid, and he liked it that way. It kept people from asking questions. But sometimes in the brief space between supply drop-off and the ship pulling out again, there were looks, quiet ones. Sometimes a glance would catch, the kind that held a question, just long enough to be answered. And if Kai saw it, if it felt right, he gave a small nod and point, casually, toward the path behind the fishing cottage. That place was always empty during the day. No one there, no questions. A few hours later, a ship would be gone. No names, no contact. Just a fleeting answer to a need. Not romance, not love. Just loneliness, met quietly and let go. No one in Eden knew. No one had to. There was no reason to come out in a town where everything whispered and nothing stayed private. He wasn't ashamed. He was just careful. Most days, the quiet was enough. But today, after 10 years, Noah was back. Kai didn't know what he'd expected. Maybe anger, maybe indifference. What he got instead was one line. "Sorry I didn't text back." And the look that said everything. He sometimes wondered what it would be like to be one of them. Not with money the way it was. Not after the 2019 bushfires. The damage hadn't touched the house directly, but it had hit everything else. The fishing routes, the markets, the flow of goods. They made it through. Tourism had slowly come back. The town had painted over what it could. But for people like Kai, it had left a dent. Kai was heading toward the repair shed, toolbox in hand. Sweat drying on his back of his neck. One of the oyster boats had a jammed winch, and the crew couldn't afford to lose a daylight. The air still smelled like salt and steel. And that's when he saw him. Noah. Walking up the gravel paths from the lower boardwalk. He looked out of place. If he hadn't known, he would assume Noah was just another tourist. The boy Kai remembered had walked like he carried the wind. This version. His frame was sharper now, movements more deliberate. He looked like someone who had lost something and never said it out loud. Their eyes met before either could pretend otherwise. Noah slowed. "Hey," he said. Kai didn't answer right away, just stopped, shifted his weight, His breath left him quiet, not cold, just measured. Noah nodded, more grounded than before. You still drink? Kai raised an eyebrow slightly. If you're ever free, maybe we grab a beer sometime, Noah added. Kai looked at him, really looked at him, and for a second, he thought about that summer, the boy on the boat, the firelight, the almost. But all he said was, maybe. And they walked side by side down the dock. Their steps didn't quite match, but neither pulled away. Still fixing boats? Noah asked eventually, nodding at Kai's toolbox. Sometimes. Kai didn't return the question. Noah didn't seem to mind. They were halfway to the shed when one of the oyster boat crew appeared at the bend, wiping his hand on a rack, half smiling. You said 10 minutes. Kai looked up, gave a short nod. The Bowline, tonight at 8? A pause. I'll wait for you, Noah said. And with that, he gave a faint, quiet smile. Not expectation, not pressure, just the line tossed out into the tide, and walked away. Kai stayed a second longer, the sun brushing the back of his neck, toolbox heavy in one hand. Then he turned toward the shed, saying nothing. Kai stood outside his house, tugging at his collar. He hadn't meant to change clothes, but he had, twice. Nothing fancy, just jeans that didn't have oil stains, and a dark button-up he hadn't worn since his cousin's engagement dinner. His mom had noticed as he passed through the kitchen. You're going out like that? She asked, elbow raised, tea mug in hand. Kai shrugged, grabbing his coat. She smirked. Al for a date, yeah? He paused, just enough for the moment to hang, and said, yeah. Then he walked out before she could ask anything else. Now outside the bar, he lit a smoke. He wasn't a regular smoker, not really. But tonight, it felt like something to hold on to. He didn't want to show up early, and he sure as hell didn't want to be late. So he waited until his watch hit 8 exactly. Then he dropped a cigarette, ground it into the gravel with his boot, and stepped inside. Noah was already at the Bowline. He got in there just before 8, earlier than he meant to, but too late to turn back. Noah ordered a beer, then let it sit. He just waited, the way he used to wait for the wind to shift on the water, not knowing if it would, just hoping it might. The clock behind the bar ticked to 8. Noah saw him the second he stepped through the door. Kai didn't rush. He just stood there for a beat. Everyone else in the bar looked like they belonged there. But Kai stood out, not in a flashy way, just clean, collected. Noah sat a little straighter. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath until Kai started walking toward him. Kai slid into the seat across from him. His shoulder relaxed but not loose, his hands resting easy on the table. Noah gave a small smile. Good to see you, Kai. Kai didn't say anything, but he stayed. They sat in silence for a moment, the low hum of the bar curling around them. Glasses clinked at the far end of the counter. Noah leaned in slightly, a small frown pulling at his brow. You smoke now? He asked, catching the faint trace of it in Kai's breath. Yeah, but not much. You? Noah gave a lopsided grin. No, never got into it. Kai gave a small nod. The silence stretched, but didn't strain. It wasn't everything, but it was something. They talked after that, about the weather, the beer, the town. Nothing either of them really wanted to ask. Nothing that mattered. After a while, Noah shifted in his seat. You want to get a smoke? Kai raised an eyebrow. Didn't you say you don't? Noah gave a half smile. Yeah, but you look like you need one. Kai nodded. Outside the air was cooler, quieter. The sea breeze tugged at the overhang, carried bits of laughter from farther down the block. Kai lit a cigarette. Noah stood beside him in silence. Neither said anything until the filter burned low. And just before they turned back toward the door, Noah reached out, quick, unthinking, and pulled Kai into a hug. It was real. Arms tight, hands fisted into fabric, a breast let out like he'd been holding it for 10 years. I missed you, Noah said, barely above a whisper. Kai stood still. He didn't say it back, but he didn't move away either. Then a voice. Well, look at that. The lovers reunited. Noah froze. Kai pulled back just slightly, enough to look toward the street. A guy leaned against the fence posts. He laughed, loud and harsh. Your mom told mine you were out on a date, mate. He looked between them. So what? You two dating now? The silence came fast, thick. No one didn't move. Kai's jaw tightened, just slightly. But he said nothing. The streetlight buzzed above them. Inside, the jukebox switched songs. And the hug hung there, unfinished. You've been listening to Salt in Our Veins, Chapter 2, Not the Same Sea. A quiet town, a familiar dock, and two boys who aren't quite boys anymore. One came home, one never left, and somewhere between silence and small talk, something old began to stir again. If you ever tried to pluck up a friendship where time left off, this one's for you. Make sure to follow, share, or leave a review. It helps us keep telling stories like this one. And if you've been here since Chapter 1, thanks for staying. Until next time, keep your eyes on the tide. Some stories come back when the waves do.